Gentlemen, referee Mark Goddard has called a stop to this contest at 3 minutes, 5 seconds of round number 2, declaring the winner by knockout and new UFC undisputed welterweight champion of the world, Jorge Masvidal.
Thank you for joining me once again, and welcome back to Keenan K TV. Let's go over the 5 reasons why Jorge Masvidal can defeat Kamaru the Nigerian Nightmare Usman and become the new UFC welterweight champion. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel with the bell notification turned on. And now with that being said, let's jump right into the video. Reason number 1 unquestionably comes in with the fact that this time around, Jorge Masvidal is well prepared and is not going to be coming into a fight on 6 days notice. 6 days notice, it is pretty much coming in without a training camp and pretty much already stopping eating and focusing on making the weight. That was pretty much the biggest battle that Jorge Masvidal had to endure in those 6 days. And now, if you really think about it this way, Jorge Masvidal came in on 6 days notice, probably the worst shape he has ever come into any fight, and the best Kamaru Usman on the night could only do what he did against Masvidal. It wasn't really that impressive. And if that's your best night and that is Jorge Masvidal's worst night, then by default you can only expect Jorge Masvidal to perform better than what he did. And so coming into this fight, I believe that it will be very important for Jorge Masvidal to establish that right away early on. It is a 5-round fight. I do not believe either Usman or Jorge will be able to finish one another. So I believe that they will have to focus on winning rounds one by one. Reason number 2 happens to be this. In my opinion, out of all the techniques and all the strikes that really play a big role in this matchup, for Jorge Masvidal to win this fight, he really has to utilize leg kicking. I believe that leg kicking is one of those really good techniques that against a wrestler could really big time pay off. But as we have seen in the opening first round, Masvidal started good, but as soon as he brought those kicks up to the midsection, Usman was able to parry it away and take it down. So I believe either he has to kick high or kick very low. If he tries going to the body, it is pretty much not really worth the reward for the amount of risk that comes with it. And so with the leg kicks early on in the fight, he can really establish range and control of the tempo. In the first fight, without a question, Kamaru Usman was in control of the tempo, he was in control of the space and then range. So even though Masvidal had great movement, slipping and diving with the shots, he was still pressed up against the fence and he was still being controlled. I believe immediately the leg kicks will create that different dynamic where Jorge Masvidal will be on the offense and Usman will be on the defense, and he really has to stay aware because those leg kicks add up, and if he starts very early on, by the 5th round he can have a very immobile Kamaru Usman and thus also take away from his pressure, which will help Masvidal create his own pressure and start winning the fight. Reason number 3 is fairly simple and straightforward. Jorge Masvidal has to stay on his feet and hold his ground. Holding his ground will mean a lot of things. Usually when a wrestler is fighting a striker, by default, the wrestler backs up the striker, and when a striker is feeling that he's being boxed in, he becomes very limited and timid and very defensively minded. That is when a striker has to worry about takedown defense, and that is when the wrestler is clinching him up, trying to take him down, and it just becomes a very hard uphill battle for the striker. However, when the striker is coming forward and pressuring the wrestler, he not only has the wrestler worrying now, but he also has the entire octagon to himself. He has enough room to back up, he has enough room to slip away, step back, counter, and just keep on putting the pressure onto the wrestler. And as soon as that pressure is being set on the wrestler can panic and throw a big reactionary strike that will be really easily countered, and I believe in those moments Jorge Masvidal will prevail. Reason number 4. Obviously, Jorge Masvidal is the more skilled striker, and he really has to establish that. But what is really important is speed. Jorge Masvidal is much faster than Kamaru Usman. Yes, Kamaru Usman is a very strong fighter in the clinch. He has, in my opinion, better punching power. He is a bigger fighter. Jorge Masvidal is a fighter who moved up from lightweight to welterweight, and Kamaru Usman is a guy who really cuts down to welterweight. So there is a big difference in physical power and physicality. So he really has to utilize his speed to the fullest extent, because that is really the only physical advantage that I could really see that I could give to Jorge Masvidal. And with Masvidal coming in a lot more fit and ready, speed will be there all 5 rounds long. Because by the end of the 5th round, you could really see that Jorge Masvidal was hardly able to move. His shots became one shots, loaded up and hoping that he could get Usman out of there with one blow. And those big strikes are easily telegraphed and easily countered, and oftentimes Jorge Masvidal just found himself countered and taken down when he was doing that stuff. So now fit, he can go 5 rounds and maintain that speed, which will be very important, and very important on the front foot as well. He has to utilize the speed, throw punches in combinations, don't overcommit, because when he was overcommitting, that was when the big telegraphs happened. So low kicking, sticking behind the jab, and using his footwork to really offset Usman will be the way to go. Because Kamaru Usman is not a fighter who is very fast. He doesn't have the best head movement. Yes, we have seen against Gilbert Burns that he got dropped. Against Colby Covington, he was getting tagged. Even against Jorge Masvidal in the first fight, he was very much so getting tagged on relative ease as well. So it really makes you wonder if Jorge Masvidal is able to maintain distance, put pressure on Kamaru Usman, utilize leg kicks, bounce in and out, but also really utilize his hand speed and stick behind a good jab, then I see Kamaru Usman really getting frustrated. It won't really be up until maybe the 3rd or 4th round when perhaps real desperation for both fighters will set in, because like I said, it will probably go to a decision. So they really have to start winning rounds, and they cannot really think about knocking one another out. Even though that I say that right now, when it comes to Kamaru Usman, like I said, he probably has more knockout power. However, he is relatively limited in the way he's finishing opponents anyway. So when it comes to him knocking him out with one shot, I don't see Jorge going down like that. So if he cannot really finish Jorge Masvidal on 6 days notice with bad cardio, things of that nature, I don't see it happening now. However, when it comes to Masvidal, the knockout blow, as much as I don't think it will happen, the reality of just all of a sudden Jorge Masvidal connecting with a big switch right overhand is a big one. So I don't rule it out. And with him being very speedy, very fit, and now accustomed to Kamaru Usman, it doesn't really mean that it won't happen. It's very unlikely, but still something that we really have to take into consideration going into this rematch. The final reason is obvious. Jorge Masvidal has tremendous takedown defense. He's a good sprawler. So immediately, if he can work on his striking offense and back up Usman, he not only has to worry less about incoming takedowns, but when they do, paired up with his great takedown defense that he has anyway, and then pair that up with his conditioning, it will be very hard for Jorge Masvidal to get taken down by Usman. And so Usman will really have to try his hardest to get that far in this matchup. And so we have a lot of things that we have to take into consideration. Obviously, we cannot only just look at the first fight and say, okay, that's it, because oftentimes rematches differ from the first fight, and especially when there is one fighter who can really improve on what he did or didn't do, then it becomes really interesting. So I'm looking forward to see what Kamaru Usman can improve on, because he pretty much fought a very dominant fight. And so it is really up to Jorge Masvidal to redeem himself and perform better than what he did, because he's pretty much never going to get another title shot. So he really has to make the most out of these chances that he has been given right now. And so we will see what will happen come fight night. In the end, only time will tell what will truly happen. For now, I have been Keenan from Keenan KTV, signing off. Later.